Are you a control freak, or do you know one? It's my way or the highway. Today on Living the Message, we are going to discuss the identity trap of seeking significance in power and how Jesus shows us the way out. Hey, this is Living the Message, where we discuss how the message of Christ might dwell among us richly. I'm Eric Targe, and I'm here with Senior Pastor of the Moody Church, Philip Miller. Hey, Philip.
Hey, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well. Today we are talking about Jacob,
the
father of Joseph.
That's
so
right.
Last week we
a little
looked at,
rewind.
A little bit of rewind. We're not really doing things in order in this series. But yeah, we looked at Joseph, who is seeking significance through people. Mm-hmm. And then this week we're looking at Jacob. And can you remind us, what's the identity trap that you say that he falls into?
So he's looking for significance through power.
Power.
So, same root soul need that Joseph has, wanting significance to matter, but he's trying to get it through power. And we see this in Jacob's life, like really early on. These stories are amazing. I mean, they're little Sunday school stories, but you start to see the texture of them and you go, wow, this is really messed up, right? But the way he gets the birthright through, manipulation and scheming with the stew, the way he gets the blessing of the firstborn, the inheritor, he gets that by deceiving his father in the tent, in the dark, with the animal hair on his arms, and finds a way to weasel his way into the blessing. And of course, all of this is we saw it in their infancy, right? When they're born, Jacob, Esau comes out first, right? And then Jacob reaches out and grabs his heel to try to get ahead. I'm coming out first, get back in here, And we just see this character trait in Jacob, that he's a heel grabber. He's a schemer, a conniver. He's a manipulator. He'll do anything he can to get ahead, to try to be the top dog, know. And so he's trying to get significance through manipulation and control and scheming and trying to work the angles and kind of make everything in life go the way he wants. And then we see that just in his life. And then, of course, he has to run away because he burns all the bridges. And so that's his identity trap. He is as an orphan-hearted person, he is trying to get the deep significance his soul longs for through manipulation, control, through power.
So we're going to be looking at power 2 more times in this series a little bit later.
Yep.
I'm curious, could you, since this is the first time we're hitting it, can you define power? What do you mean by power?
Yeah, so power is the sense of it's a sense of I can make things happen. I'm in charge. I'm in control. I'm forcing things to happen, right? So power, there's lots of ways we could talk about power, but it's just that sense of I'm going to make this happen.
Okay.
I'm going to take charge. I'm going to force it.
Power is about control. I think that's a really helpful thing to keep in mind. So how does Jacob get out of this trap?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? He runs away to Laban.
Yeah.
And Laban turns out to be every bit as conniving and shrewd and manipulative as Jacob is, right? And we see that, they go toe-to-toe about the flocks, and Jacob kind of comes out on top, but then Laban really has a leverage point with his daughters because Jacob falls in love with Rachel, and then Laban is I'm going to find a way to get this guy to work for me longer than he intended. So instead of the 7 years he's supposed to give me for Rachel, at the end of which he gives Jacob Leah, and of course she's wearing a veil and all this kind of stuff. But it's such an amazing moment because Jacob deceived his father with a false identity in a tent in the dark, right? And now you've got a false identity in a tent in the dark, right? It's like his comeuppance, right? And Laban comes out on top, and he's like, "Oh, Laban," And so then he has to work another set of years for Rachel's hand, and that's how we get Leah and Rachel as his wives. But it's interesting that God is showing Jacob the shadow side of his manipulation and control. Like, this is not working for you, Jacob. Like, you're not gonna be able to maintain control at all times. There are things you can't control in this universe, and you need something bigger than that. You need someone to take care of you. You need someone to watch over you. If you live with this sort of, control impulse, power impulse, where you're always trying to gain power, and that's how you're going to know who you are, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
And so God's using even these really weird things to sort of unseat him.
Yeah.
And of course, then we see this really come to a head when Jacob does go back. He's afraid of Esau. Esau's coming. That's the one thing Jacob has feared his whole life, is to come face to face with Esau, who he defrauded and he cheated. And like, Esau has every right to be mad and angry and to tear him limb from limb. Yeah. And Jacob, for the first time in his life, feels helpless. Yeah. Like he has no power. He has no control. He has no manipulation. He cannot scheme his way out of this one. Yeah. And then God wrestles him down, and ultimately wounds his hip, gives him a tendon injury in his hip so that he limps. And in that moment, God renames Jacob. And the whole thing is, will he keep striving with God, where he's trying to manipulate and control and get the blessings of God on his own terms, or will he relax and let God fight for him, strive on his behalf? Yeah. And as he limps, that's the choice he needs to make. Yeah. He's limping. He can't fight. He can't flee. He can't manipulate. He can't scheme. He can't even run away, right? He has to helplessly limp forward, trusting that God will take care of him. Yeah. So he's out of control. There's no power left as he limps. And that is really the mending of his soul. Yeah. And God wrenches his body to mend his soul. And he finds that there is an identity he can live in where he gets all the things he ever wanted, the blessing, the inheritance, the favor of God. He gets all of this by grace. Not manipulating, not striving, but he just receives it by grace as a beloved child of a God who confers significance upon him. Yeah. And he doesn't have to strive or manipulate to get it. And that is his mending. Yeah. And it's a shift, right? He's starting to find his significance not through manipulation and control, but through surrender and trust. Yeah. Now,
Jacob, as you said, was incredibly manipulative in his quest for power and significance. Are there other ways we can seek significance in power besides just being manipulative? Because we all know manipulative people, right? And we get frustrated with them. But like, what about those of us who maybe we see the manipulation, we're like, oh, that's the worst. Like, those are the worst. Like, where is it in us?
Yeah. Well, it could be, yes. So the impulse for power is just this impulse to be in control, to be the master of your own destiny. And there's lots of ways we can try to demonstrate that control, right? Yeah. We can try to control our schedules, control our lives, control events. We can try to gain power and control through our careers, a sense of like I'm in charge and I'm important and so I'm secure and safe and significant because I'm on top and I've got power and I can, you know what I mean? Like I think we can try to assert power in relationships and, like really lording it over other people or using our anger as a tool for power over other people. So it's really, it's a big category, significance through power. It can show up in lots of different ways. But it's always has this, it's different from people. People is like, if I'm looking for significance through people, I'm always looking for them to approve me. So I'm looking outside myself, right? It's different from possessions, which we're going to talk about next time, which is where I'm looking for a sense of significance in the stuff I have. So again, it's outside of me. Power is more of an internal one. It's less, I'm not looking at people or my stuff to kind of give me significance. I'm looking inwardly to my sense of control and agency of like, I've got this. And that's how I know I'm okay and I matter and I've got worth is like I made it happen. I did it my way, that sort of thing.
So that's really helpful. I think it brings up another question though of when you talk about trying to control things or manipulate things and feeling security in that kind of way, is it okay, would you say, to make things happen? Like I know there's a lot of people that have that mindset, which biblical, not biblical, depending on how you use it, but of let go, let God, right? Let go and let God. How do we know if we're seeking power and are trying to make things happen? If we've fallen into that identity trap, or maybe we're just trying to do good things or do things.
So I think we all need a sense of agency. We need to know that our choices matter. We need a sense of like, I can make a difference, right, in my own life. So this is not a helplessness. This is not a victim. We're not saying the answer to this over control is a helpless victim.
Yeah,
like
passivity.
Right, passive. We're not saying that. But there is a difference between the deep security deep significance that my soul needs. That there's a difference to looking for that through control, like versus looking to God. So, for example, if I'm going through life and I say, okay, the way I'm going to really get significance is I have a 10-year plan, and I'm going to work that plan, and I'm going to make these goals happen, and I'm going to achieve it, and I'm going to get to the end of it, and that's how I'm going to know, right, that I've really made it in life, right? And so I'm rigid, and I'm dogmatically just going after it, right? And I'm right.
Yeah.
And but what that does is it sends me on I have to have all those things happen. It has to work out my way. I can't have setbacks. I can't have like my goals have to be met, right? Or it starts to like, do I matter? Do I really make right?
Yeah.
It starts to question my significance in the world.
Yeah. Or even maybe turns you against other people. Like I know
it could be very dysfunctional.
who, like, they set up boundaries because they have their vision board, and it's like, this is what I'm going to accomplish this year, and if you get in my way, then I want nothing to do with
I'll
you.
just roll over you, steamroll.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
So that's helpful.
And so so I can get into a lot of dysfunction based off of like this power impulse to get significance. But on the other side of this, right, is if as a follower of Jesus, I'm harnessing these deep resources that are available to me in the gospel, that God has said, you know what, you're significant when you're sleeping. Like on Sabbath, for example. Sabbath is a great tool to help learn where your significance lies without power, right? That when you're powerless, when you're weak, when you're helpless, when you're not even doing anything, you are actually beloved. You are a child of God. You're prized. You belong. God delights over you. It's amazing to me. Jesus slept. Like he took naps. This is amazing, right? This is so freeing that God is delighted over Jesus when he's a carpenter and when he's giving sermons.
Yeah. Like
when he's just growing up, taking care of his family, and when he's casting out demons. The same pleasure of his Father resting on his life. It's amazing to me. So in other words, what it does is it frees you to say who I really am, who I am deep down. The fact that I matter is grounded in my relationship with God, which then means I can go work my 10-year plan. But I don't have to obsess about it. I don't have to make it the thing that I shed every relationship and just roll over everyone. I can actually have setbacks, encounter failures, have not all of my dreams come true, and still know who I am. Because I'm significant because of my Heavenly Father. You see how freeing that is? Yeah. It doesn't make you passive. You still go out. You still have dreams. You still have goals. You still work hard. But you lose the franticness under it. There's an anxiety to grasping for always living in control and everything working your own way that is just really unhealthy. It's a symptom of this orphan-hearted living, and really God wants to free us from all of that. And so he's given us the resources to do that.
So without throwing away our 10-year plans or our vision boards, what are some practical ways we can get out of this trap. Now, I realize for some, maybe it is throwing away the 10-year plan or the vision board, but are there ways to keep it and still move out that you would say?
I think here's this is going to sound very generic.
Okay.
But I think it's helpful.
Give me the generic.
I think the whole thing here, the test, is how tightly or loosely we're holding on to our plans and our sense of control.
Okay.
The more open-handed we are with our lives, with our outcomes, with the things that we dream about, but we don't know for sure. The more open-handedly we hold our lives and our choices and our futures, I think that's the ultimate test, because the only way we can open-handedly hold our life that way is if our security is actually grounded somewhere else.
So you say open-handed. What does that mean, open-handed?
Well, there's a rigidness.
What are ways that you know that you're open-handed as opposed to rigid?
So it's can you let go of outcomes? Can you entrust things into God's hand? So you can say, hey, I really would like this promotion in 5 years. I'm going to work for it, right? But not my will, but yours be done, right? The Gospels will say, or the epistles will say things like, one day we'll go do this and that, and we'll make money, and we're going to do this, and we're going to dream. And it says, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will do those things. Mm-hmm. Why that corrective? Because we really aren't in control. We really don't have as much power over our futures as we think we do. Yeah. And so I think the Christian child of God posture is to say, you know what, I'm going to dream, and I'm going to make goals, and I'm going to make plans, but I need to hold them loosely. I need to hold my hands open instead of rigidly holding on to everything and manipulating and scheming and controlling and trying to force things and make it happen and just plow my way through life and steamroll over everyone that gets in my way, right? But to open-handedly say, God, you're good. Your plans are better than my plans. Your dreams are better than my dreams. Yes. I trust you with my future. I trust you with my soul. I trust you with my life. And I open my hands. And so I'm going to make plans, and I'm going to hold them loosely, right? I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to lay all my best efforts down, and I'll leave the outcomes in your hands, right? Yeah. Not my will, but yours be done. Yeah. And I think that is a beautiful childlike trust that is symptomatic of finding significance elsewhere, right? Instead of trying to just force everything, so I know who I am. I'm actually finding who I am in my relationship with my Heavenly Father, who holds my future. It's a different way to live.
One of the things that we've keep coming back to is the idea that the gospel has resources for us to find our identity in him, to put behind us that orphan-hearted mentality. Can you tell us, when it comes to seeking significance and power, what resources in the gospel help us with our deep identity need for significance?
Paul talks about this. He says, when I am weak, then I am strong. Yeah. Because God's strength is actually perfected in my weakness, which is exactly what Jacob had to learn. He learned to live with a limp, and that limp was grace. And it was teaching him dependency on his father, so he couldn't actually go out and do everything on his own. He had to rely on his father. And that actually is when he was most strong. He was weakest when he was doing the Jacob thing and scheming and manipulating. That was when he was at his weakest. He was actually at his strongest when he was limping by grace into his future. And we see that in Paul. We see that all over the scriptures, that God wounds us to heal us. And there's a limping, a vulnerability, a surrenderedness to a life that is trusting God to know who we are. And we don't have to strive. We don't have to make it all happen, but we actually walk in grace. We limp forward in surrender and weakness and find that life with God on our side is way better than the life we lived all by ourselves, right? And again, we're just coming back to, if the gospel is true, if Jesus really has given us his deep identity, and we are now children of God. We have a good Father who knows our future, who is always for us, never against us, who is, we can take on his yoke and we can walk with him, and he bears the weight. We don't have to carry the weight of our lives all by ourselves and try to control everything. Like, he is with us. And even the things that are outside of our control are ultimately mercy and grace as we lean on him and discover that he's strong and he's with us and he'll never leave us or forsake us. So there's a lot there that if we would just learn to lean on the presence and power of God in our weakness, we actually would be stronger than if we did it in our strength and in our manipulation, our control, our power.
It's a simple truth that I think we all teach our children, and yet we forget and need to preach it to ourselves. I taught my daughter at a young age, and she's still very young, but from the time she was 2, she was singing the song Jesus Loves Me, right? Little ones to him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. That simple reminder can truly help us to find our way out of this identity.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful picture, because at the end of the day, it is a childlike faith, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to reinforce, like, through this series, is like, I can live as an orphan trying to go control everything and make my life work on my terms, or I can live like a child and trust that my good Father has my best, and that everything in life is filtered through his loving hands, and that if I'm with him, it's going to be okay. I can limp along in the strength of who my Father is and know that he's got me. And that's actually a much more human way to live.
Yeah.
I'm actually much more alive, much more full, much more free when I live like a child than when I have to be all rigid and controlling as an orphan. It's a better way to live.
It is. So are you ready to limp your way by grace into the future? We hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and if you did, I'd encourage you to go listen to the message that went along with it. As always, we want to encourage you to like and subscribe, leave us a review. We always enjoy hearing from you. You can send us your thoughts and your messages at livingthemessage@moodychurch.org. We're always encouraged to hear from you, or you can send us in a text, especially if you have questions about the sermons that have happened. You can text us in at 312-682-1888, and we will always try to ask your questions in our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. We truly hope that you were encouraged, equipped, and enabled to now go and live the message.